Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. This first item before you is located at 2920 Greenwich Road. The board last reviewed this project approximately 5 months ago on February of 2015, and the motion was made to return the project for redesign, and a lot of the comments or the conditions the board had related to the grading and to reduce the grading, and I'll go into that. But the information and the conditions that the board had made are in the staff report, so I'll basically be going over that. Just to refresh your memory, the project involves the construction of a new 2,819 square foot, 3-story single-family house and a 532 square foot attached garage on a vacant lot which is 10,903 square feet. The subject lot has an average current slope of 70% and will require grading, approximately 1,316 cubic yards of earth that will be graded. That includes cut and fill. There is an environmental initial study, or M&D, that was prepared for the project. That M&D was circulated for a 20-day public review period from November 7th of 2013 to November 27th of 2013. The revisions made to the project include reduced grading and a reduction in the total floor area compared to what was originally submitted and evaluated in the environmental document. So therefore, staff determined that recirculation of the M&D was not required. At this point, staff is recommending approval with conditions. I've pinned the old or the previous plans that was reviewed by the board and the new ones so you can see the comparison of how the elevations have changed. So what I'd like to do is, before I jump into the conditions the board had made, I just want to highlight that the modifications to the design compared to the original will not completely top off the knoll as was originally designed. As proposed, the project will preserve a portion of the existing natural hillside atop the knoll and will result in approximately 35% less grading compared to the previous submittal. The applicant has made an effort to set the building further back, nestle it into the hillside, as was conditioned by the board. The new design approach reduces the building's prominence, mass, and visual impact on surrounding properties. And since the planning hearing officer's hearing and the last design review board meeting, the revisions to the project includes a significant reduction of the building footprint along the easterly side of the house to reduce encroachment into the knoll, reducing and pushing back portions of the house to reduce portions of the vertical mass and volumes at the front away from the knoll. And as proposed, the house is narrow at the front as viewed from the street. Based on the revised plans, a portion of the building's mass was transferred to the center and rear of the lot as viewed on the southwest elevation. This is an appropriate change to the site and building forms in order to achieve a reduction in grading and massing relief at the front of the lot. Any questions so far for staff? No?
Anybody?
Would you?
I have a question.
Sure.
Has staff considered or discussed removal plan for the debris, as in how they're going to get it down onto Chevy Chase?
Building and safety evaluates that kind of work and how many truckloads and the times that the trucks can move and how to control dust on the site. It's not a design review issue.
Actually,
it's not a design review issue.
Okay, we'll discuss that.
There may
go ahead.
There may be some information in the environmental initial study that does or may address those issues. I'd have to review the document just to highlight that particular section.
I think there are some conditions in the back there that on the.
Yeah, I guess I misspoke. It is an environmental issue rather than a design issue.
Well,
but it's
yeah, I understand. What I wanted to get clarification on, and I read these things on my iPad, so I'm referencing it now on the actual paper version. I believe it says that one of the things that we need to look at is the conditions for removal of grading on page 2. And may impose conditions to address impacts related to construction and grading, including but not limited to haul routes. And so the reason I bring that up is if that's something that we need to consider or not, then we need to review that because of the specific location of this particular property is kind of off-grid. You know, it's...
Part of the board's review under this new streamlined process, whereas before it used to be reviewed by the hearing officer under a conditional use permit, now the board's authority is, correct, Board Member Charchian, to review grading.
And holloway routes and all these other things that we have to consider? Okay.
Yeah, that will be done.
I don't know
during the
specifically
building
about the
permit.
haul
I don't
routes,
think we should
but
get into the haul route.
I don't think the city has the expectation that the Design Review Board is going to be dictating or even suggesting haul routes. I think that's the expertise of other people in the city. But you are able to focus on grading, how it affects the landforms on the site and how the building sits on the site.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I might add in a little bit, the other thing that the hearing officers used to look at for conditional use permits for single-family hillside was compliance with the hillside design guidelines. And I think that's part now of what the board is charged to look at more specifically is how these new single families are complying with those requirements.
But that references to the site planning and
How the house
grading.
fits into the
But
topography.
we should not get into how it's routed. I mean,
Correct.
I'm assuming that
Or
is-
building and safety.
Yeah.
No, it can be in the board's purview if you think that there's excessive grading on the site that could be reduced by changing the mass or site plan of the building. It's well within your discussion for that. But the specifics of how many truckloads and haul routes and hours and things are handled by others.
Okay.
the conditions that were made on February 12th of 2015 are located in the second to last page of your design review staff report. Would you like me to go over those conditions verbatim and how the applicant addressed them, or do you have any specific questions?
I would.
You would?
Yeah. Very quickly, I mean, just kind of going over them.
Okay.
But
Because-
before you start, I want to go on record that Mr. Simonian has joined us.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so the first condition was to redesign the project to substantially reduce the amount of grading. As I indicated earlier, they have done that. The grading originally was 1999 cubic yards cut and fill, and currently it's 1,316 cubic yards cut and fill combined. Reduce size of project to bring floor area closer to the neighborhood average. The proposed floor area of the house was reduced to 2,819 square feet compared to 3,066 square feet in the previous submittal, which is within the neighborhood average, which is 1,774 square feet, to being the lowest square footage, to 3,422 square feet being the highest square footage. And the house will be 464 square feet over the neighborhood average of 2,355 square feet. However, staff does not believe that's significantly higher. Number 3 was to reduce the height of portion of the house built on the knoll to 1 story. Based on the revisions to the building footprint, the house is narrower, it's deeper and nestled into the hillside. The access staircase across the front of the house was eliminated and relocated to the side of the house. So as you view the elevations, it will be located on the right-hand side. And this modification minimizes encroachment onto the knoll and results in less grading. Item 4 was to explore the use of impact walls to reduce grading and eliminate sunken rear yard. The applicant has indicated that the proposed walls along the side of the house facing the knoll are impact walls, and additional low retaining walls are included. A portion of the area behind the house is proposed to be a flat paved yard, which will provide air and light for the rooms at the rear. Item 5 was landscaping at the front needs to be enhanced, And to be more appropriate to the terrain and to complement the design of the house, I have pinned up the landscape plans, the before and after. And the revised plans do show additional planting at the front of the property, parallel to the street, including lavender lantana and a multi-trunk toyon and kangaroo paw. Number 6 was that the renderings that were originally presented did not accurately depict the hillside conditions. So the new renderings do show the proposed house more accurately placed on the hillside, depicts the site planning, topography, and landscaping. And I included the rendered perspective on the top right-hand side panels, so you can review that and see how it's a little more accurate compared to the previous. Number 7 was to clearly identify the trash location, and that's proposed next to the front entry stairs hidden from public view. Item 8 was to identify the location for the mechanical equipment. The applicant has indicated the water heater will be inside the laundry or the garage area and outside the minimum 20 by 20 interior clearance. And the AC unit will be located in the rear yard. Those were the 8 conditions, and staff just has one condition or recommended condition for the board to consider. On page 8, to lighten the overall appearance of the staircase, including its railings and handrails. And that would be the staircase, the emergency staircase on the far right of the house. And this can be done by lowering the staircase wall, proposing the same base finish to match other walls and base at the front of the house, and introduce a planter next to the staircase and the driveway to allow shrubs and or climbing vines to soften the appearance of the wall and also the height of the wall. And that would conclude my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Any questions? Nope. No questions. I'll open the public hearing. Mr. Edward Hagopian.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. My name is Edward Hagopian. I'm the architect and designer of this project. My address is 220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. I think the presentation of Milka and other members were complete, and I don't have much to add to the presentation. We worked very hard in the last several months try to find a solution to avoid the knoll, and I believe we have found a solution that works out by having the rooms on the back, and if you have a small backyard on the back is just because to get a light for those rooms. Other than that, as you can see, the grading change is huge. It's down from almost 2,000 cubic yards down to 1,300 cubic yards. So that's all I can say. If you have any questions.
Sure, Ms. Palmer, go ahead.
Maybe I'm not reading it correctly. I'm wondering how you access the raised portion in the rear. You have 2 flat areas in the rear. One is at 985 elevation and the other's at 970. I don't see where you would access the higher elevation.
We can use a metal stairs on these 2 different elevations. That's it. You're talking about the backyard?
Yes.
Yeah. We have 2 different elevations.
I'm talking about this patio here.
No. That's not accessible. That's not a patio.
It's just a paved patio?
No, it's not a paved patio. It's a part of the
That's not paved.
dirt there. It's not a patio. It's only what we have done. May I approach?
Yes, please.
Yeah. The patio is only here.
Right?
Yeah, not here.
But you have drains in there.
Yeah, we have drains here to solve the zoning code issues and drainage issues for the engineering. Otherwise, this is not a place to go.
Okay. That's my question. Thank you.
Mr. Hagopian, I have a quick. Go ahead, Mr. Churchill. Go ahead.
I was going to say, while you're up here, I just have a quick question. I was unclear from the drawings. Is your retaining wall here, or is your retaining wall here?
Both, but this one is more exposed, this one is more exposed, this one is less exposed. And we
Okay.
have, by the way, we have a small planter here in front of the stairs that we will put like plants there, that it will come up and partially cover that wall.
Okay.
Mr. Hogopian, since I have you here, you have those oak trees we discussed the last times. They're within this major excavation on the sides. Are you going to protect those trees?
Which one?
Your tree, one of them is somewhere in here, and you
I
got
think
this.
one is outside the property, somewhere here. yeah.
Somewhere here and somewhere here.
Yeah.
And this one approximately somewhere here. You mean you're going to save that tree with this excavation?
I think we can. One is here, I believe. This is 12
There's
inch
two of
oak.
them. There's one there and one right there.
This one is
They're
8
clearly
inch.
shown on the site
One,
plan.
Yeah.
This is 8-inch oak tree.
That's going to
Is that
survive?
revised since the...
I don't know if it will survive, otherwise we can plant another one.
Okay.
Was the report revised?
Yes, it was. I have a copy, so I can show you what the AOR stated.
So they've made their recommendations.
Yeah, but
And these are the revised indigenous tree measures.
Thank you.
So I have a question. The stairs or the steps, the side steps that we have along the south of the building. But first of all, I think we need to discuss about the saving of these two trees. In my opinion, I don't think they're going to survive. So I think rather than beating around the bush, so let's just deal with
can we
that.
discuss that while we're deliberating?
Yeah, then we can.
The applicant is aware
Yeah.
of it.
So my question is that what I'm concerned about is this large retaining wall condition that we're creating to add the stairs next to the driveway. The question is that, and the stairs is pretty much on grade, as I'm seeing this. The question that I have is that, is it possible to move the stairs to the property line and create a buffer and lower the retaining wall that it's against the driveway and the steps and create some sort of a landscape buffer or some sort of a softening of that large retaining wall that it's creating? That's my question, and it's kind of a two-pronged question to planning and to you, Mr. Hagopian.
I don't know. Maybe there's a possibility, except that I have to work to see. Do we meet all the zoning codes with? First of all, we have to be 5 feet away from the property line to have a retaining wall that the height is 5 feet.
Well, the
Because immediately when we start to go up on the right side, we have a wall. We have to have a retaining wall, and that retaining wall cannot be in the property line if the height is more than 3 feet, which in some cases it is more than 3 feet.
Yeah, but when I'm looking at your profile on your elevation, it feels, or it seems, because I don't have elevation points along the wall, it feels like it's actually on grade. Well, if you
why-
are on grade or 18 inches above grade, I think you should be okay.
You can have stairs that are on grade within the interior setback, but Mr. Hagopian's correct. You can't have a retaining wall more than 3 feet in the interior setback.
Right. And but
So if he's
I'm
saying it's
looking at
5, then it would be a problem.
I'm looking at the profile on the southwest elevation, and I can actually see the steps going there. That means it's on grade and possibly the front beginning of it. And if it's within the 3 feet, you can't. So I'm just kind of understanding this so that we can play with the retaining wall against the driveway.
And
Okay,
that's why the suggestion was made in the staff report, because staff had the same concern about having a massive wall along
Right.
the driveway side, so that's why a suggestion was made. Can you increase the earth or an additional plant or something in that area
And-
to create a buffer and then reduce the exposure of that height
And
to
that,
no more than
that
5 feet?
actually plays in with the chimney, because the chimney is not, you can't have a wood-burning chimney, so it becomes a fake chimney. So it's
It's a gas burning chimney.
It's a gas-burning chimney, so you can actually have an indirect. So I'm just wondering, by creating that,
By the way, we have a ditch behind that, drainage.
Right. So, anyways, just something to
We can
discuss.
look at the
a little
land
some
Yes,
more on
yes,
that because-
absolutely.
Any other questions to the applicant?
Yeah, and I wanted to, just very generally, Mr. Hagopian, if you could just approach the bench, the drawings one more time. The big cuts that occurred in the grading, or in the number of cubic yards of grading, can you just quickly describe the major changes in the design that resulted in the cubic yardage going down?
First of all, if you compare this facade with this facade, is much narrower here. And also this stairs here going to the back of the building, all this was resulting in huge cuts and grading here and here. So all these things are eliminated. Now we have the front shortened by several feet, and the stairs, instead of going here, because that stairs also takes a lot of grading to support the dirt to walk next to that. I'm going to the back of the building. Those are all a lot of gradings that by this change we have, as you can see.
And is that top yard, the top open space, is it relatively at the same height as before, as the same elevation as before?
This one, this backyard?
Yes.
Yes.
And so,
But this whole grading here is eliminated.
But the roof on the bedroom or on the, what is it, library on the other floor is much higher. You've increased the height.
Because it's split level at that
Yeah,
point.
so you increased the height there
Yeah.
versus
Mhm.
what it
So
was.
yeah, it's in the back, it's not visible.
and that drawing that you have, Mr. Hagopian, at the top there, the one that has that, right above the pink sign, the hatched portion, that's the graded portion up top?
This?
The previous plan.
Correct.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
is there a new drawing that kind of depicts the grading portion?
Should be this one.
I think it's to the left.
To the left. I don't think it's, I think Mr.
Yeah.
Simonian, they used to have, they were intending to grade there, and they're no longer grading in that area. Is that correct, Mr.?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I have no other speaker, unless I'm mistaken. I have no other speakers on this item. Anybody wishes to speak? It's your opportunity now. All right, let's move on. I'll close the public hearing. Any questions to staff before we start? No?
I'm still questioning these stairs where the oak tree is on the right side, and this report states that it's not going to be an issue moving them to the outside, yet the branches of the trees are only this high off the ground.
Right, they will need to obtain a pruning permit, and I think that was, if I believe,
It's moved
that
the
was,
stairs within 7 feet of the trunk, so that's still not an issue evidently.
I'm just going by what the AOR states in the report.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer.
And I had another question for staff. Was this a case that was heard previously by a senior hearing officer, or had it gone to?
By a hearing officer?
Yes. And that for the same things for the CUP?
It was for a CUP for grading and for the slope, and it was denied.
Okay.
It would, again, the numbers were much higher.
Got it.
And it was denied, and then the streamlined process came into effect shortly thereafter. And so at that point, when they reapplied, it was now under the design reviews authority as opposed to the hearing officer.
Okay. And
But it came to us once before.
once before.
Right.
Yeah, which led to the conditions that you imposed on it as the authority to look at the grading and the...
I don't have those original conditions where it was part of the first case.
Those are the ones that I discussed earlier on page 8. They're
Those
in
were our
bold.
conditions.
Those were all conditions made by the DRB.
Right. And then there were previous conditions that were applied that were part
no.
of the February 2000?
No, that is the February.
Okay.
On page 8,
No, I realize that.
Okay.
And then when we had the hearing in February,
right?
we had the notes and the conditions from the senior hearing officer's initial hearing, part of that
I
one.
believe you did request that decision letter, and you did actually review it while you were on the dais.
Right,
Yes.
I see. Okay.
But they were not part of the report.
I see, okay.
No.
Okay, that's what it was, okay. I remember now. Okay, thanks.
Does staff have any information on these louver canopies
In terms of the material,
and what they are? And
I'll have to look. I have the material up on the material board up on
before I
the.
ask the
But I
architect to open
don't-
up, maybe they have. I don't.
Yeah,
see
we don't have anything that's not on the
Specific?
drawings. So,
only
Yeah, I
on
noticed that
this-
too, we don't have.
In the section, it just shows louver, but I just need to.
yeah, we can assume they're horizontal slats running across the length of the canopy, but I don't know if they're angled or straight or.
It seems they are angled in a section, but I just,
Well, in the perspective, they don't look angled.
Yeah, you can't really see the.
if you look at the
inside.
section,
It's the inside of them.
Okay.
could be
Yeah, they
wrong.
appear to be angled in the section.
That's just a hatching, we can clarify it with the applicant. Is that do you have any other questions to the applicant so I can open it up? Mr. Milliken? Is that the only question?
No, I think I'm.
Or maybe it'll come up, Mr. Judge?
Fine, thank you.
Okay,
Should I bring in?
ready to start? I'll start with you, Mr. Milliken.
So, I think overall, I'm much happier now that we're removing less dirt, and I'm sure the architect has done its best and convinced the clients to reduce some square footages and kind of understand what is going on with the area and what our intent was. I think it needs a little bit of a fine-tuning, but overall, I'm fine with the project. As I mentioned about the steps, I think I would like to have the architect study if the possibility is there. I would like that. I am convinced, I'm fairly convinced, and 90% convinced that those trees are not going to survive. So if they're not going to survive, might as well deal with it now and not design around something that it's not going to survive, and be more proactive and be able to design accordingly. I think if it's possible, moving the stairs closer to the property line, creating some sort of a buffer between the stairs and the driveway, softening that retaining wall, I think that's going to be really essential to make that a cut into the hill much more pleasant. The some of the finer details, I think a little bit of a fine tuning won't hurt. In my opinion, I think having two different types of railings, I don't think it's appropriate. I think we should go with one type of railing. We have railing that is on the stairs, and we have glass railing in the building. In my opinion, I think I'd rather see the original proposal, which was more of a horizontal look that is consistent with the steps rather than the glass railing. Also, there are certain things that were done in the original design that I really liked, and now it's different. The carrying of the fenestrations that are simple, clean, just very nice, straightforward, whereas now it's straight, but then you have this kind of a shift. So I would rather carry this, be a little bit more symmetrical. Also, looking into the actual canopy, I think proportionally the dimension versus the height, it kind of it looks kind of overextended, and it's kind of flimsy. I think I wouldn't mind fattening them up, carrying them exactly the same, just kind of very clean, minimal, nice. Everything is kind of making sense in that fashion. I would also, if possible, I'm not really fond of the chimney itself, being that it is a, and if that, what we've done in the past, what it was done in the past to kind of float this. Anyways, if it helps to work out the meandering of the steps and the stairs, I'm okay with that. Other than that, I think the retaining walls are fine. There's nothing else we can do with the retaining walls. There's always a challenge when you do an uphill, and how you deal with the retaining walls. I think it's a good idea having these different steps and multi-level interior and kind of bleed into the hill on the interior function rather than creating retaining walls in that sense. That back area is not really a functioning area. It's more of a, as the architect mentioned, it's more of an area for air and light ventilation for the bedrooms. So if possible, and if it's not going to be much of an issue, I would suggest to carry some of the landscaping around the back of and rather than having a 15-foot retaining wall staring out from the bedroom, possibly having some sort of a planter or something in front of that to kind of soften that up. And I don't know, I mean, I'm talking about a foot, even having something to grow, goublevillers or something that would kind of grow on the retaining wall to kind of soften that up. I think that would be fine. Or even possibly even having something planted on top and then pushing the drain back a bit and then planting something behind the retain. I don't know. I mean, these are just some thoughts. But overall, I'm fine with the project.
If you could just clarify your thoughts on the chimney, if the stairway stays where it is?
So what I'm... so, you know how the steps are coming around?
Right.
And where before you could not see any chimney effect against it. So if that was the case, then you would have had a straight run and you wouldn't have all this meandering. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that really would help if they carry that in, if they can kind of bring this in and then take it against the building without having that chimney. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's going to help. This is not doing anything for me. I mean, having this element is not really, I'd rather have this step down rather than having these stairs going around.
Would you be interested in an exposed flue, perhaps, attached to the sidewall?
Or it could be recessed in. I mean,
it could just be recessed in.
The fireplace could be recessed in.
So the condition will be to avoid the boxy projection of the chimney, find another solution?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that all, Mr.
Yeah.
Mr. Chapter?
I'm going to limit my comments to those things that we can comment on. You've reduced the overall cut fill below 1,500 cubic feet. DRB, I just reviewed a few things. Can't comment on that, even though there is a mention of it in there. So the only one I want to focus in on is the refuse plan. It was my suggestion last time that you have a look at the refuse plan. And you've done that by placing it underneath the stair entrance, the stairs to the entrance, but it's very close to the main entrance of the property. It looks like there's going to be some consensus on reworking the stairs on the right side of the property, the access stairs. So one of the things that we might want to consider is if those stairs are reworked, relocating the refuse from that space to the stairs. I would be in support of something like that. Yes, if possible. If they're going to remove the stairs over to the property line, as my colleague has suggested, there might be a way to work it out. If there isn't, you leave it there. I'm okay with it. But my intention in bringing up the refuse plan last time was not to end up with the refuse in the front near the stairway, near the main entrance. But if that's the only place you have it, that's the only place you have it. It's just a recommendation. It's not a condition. Okay.
Ed, we'll figure it out.
I don't know.
That's it. Otherwise, I think Mr. Hagopian has done a lot of changes, and they're positive changes. So I'm in support of the program, the project.
Thank you, Mr. Charchin. Ms. Palmer? Please.
Yes. I'm going to disagree with the arborist report. I can see two of the trees up that stairway on the right side are right in the swale, and that's going to affect them, as well as the stairs are closer than they were before. So I think I also agree that they're not going to survive. I have one suggestion.
Oh, yeah.
Just a suggestion right in here, when you come into the driveway this way, maybe this retaining wall could wrap a little bit, and this could open it up a little bit because it might have made it easier access off the street. And rather than just have this straight slope up here, get a little higher planting. So it's just a suggestion. And other than that, I think it's an improved plan over the former plan.
And then if we need a tree replacement plan, we'll just follow the standard city protocol for the number of replacement trees and on the site?
Well, I think one of the issues we had before was if any of those trees are gone, this is going to be standing up much bolder than the street. So if there's any way to protect, especially that tree closest to the street, and then maybe replacements on the other ones, but I really think they're not going to survive.
Thank you. Mr. Simonian?
I support the general direction of the design as well. I think it's been a nice improvement how you've been able to kind of carve into the hillside, and you've been able to reduce quite a bit of massing of the building on the left side, but more importantly the grading as well. One thought that I wanted to kind of discuss as a general approach, we have, since the site planning is really part of this board's preview, and when we're talking about these kind of upslope properties, they're very difficult to design. There's only certain ways that you could do it. You have your garage and a very small entry in the ground level. You go up to your living level. You go up to your third level, and that's really where you start to possibly get a backyard. And then, as always, that backyard ends up having somewhere between a 12 and a 15-foot retaining wall all the way around it. It literally becomes like a swimming pool without views. A lot of these homes that are developed in Echo Park and Silver Lake, they end up with roof decks. And what that does is it provides really nice views out of the home, and it eliminates that huge retaining wall. It eliminates all that grading, and it's something interesting. So as a concept, we have this basically we're creating this 15-foot retaining wall, which is here, which is 986, and this is 970, so it's about a 16-foot retaining wall. And over here it's more of a, say, a 7-foot retaining wall, and it goes up from, say, 7 to 16. And the bedroom's at 975, right, according to this. And so this area is kind of below these bedroom levels, and they access this somehow. Not quite.
They access it from the kitchen.
Kitchen over here?
Yeah, the bedroom is higher.
Okay. And so hypothetically, this much dirt is being taken out, to accommodate this backyard, whereas in, say, if this roof deck gets transferred here, we already have an elevator, and this elevator is already going up, and it's coming to, where's the top level? This is it?
That's it.
Yeah, right here. And then when we're looking at the roof deck, I was looking at the small drawings, it's very much possible to access it, and you end up basically with a really nice roof deck in this area, right in here. So the homeowner ends up with a wonderful roof deck, better views, because right here they're totally sunken in. They're already accessing it with some stairs, some 5 feet of steps. They're going down according to this. They're already taking 5 feet of steps to access this area. So whether they go down 5 feet or go up 5 feet, it's kind of the same thing. And it's an interesting concept for us to start considering. The one thing it would add is there would be some added height to that tower going up of that. But let's say if it was just access with stairs, then it's really the same thing. They could be open air. It wouldn't really affect the height of the building. I thought Mr. Malik's thoughts on relocating the stairs closer to the PL property line and then kind of being able to slope the dirt makes a lot of sense as far as reducing grading. A lot of my comments are really geared towards that, is how to reduce grading as much as possible on these difficult sites. I think in general, the design concept has been narrowed, and so it's affecting the grading quite a bit, which is nice. Now, what I wanted to kind of bring up was this concept of these roof decks as we start looking at these very specific, unique projects, which is very steep upslope properties in the hillsides, where they're ending up with these backyards that require a ton of grading and these very narrow streets, and it's very hard to get dirt in and out anyways. It's an interesting thing that's been really dialed in parts of LA, and we've certainly done it. And so those would be my comments as something to briefly discuss as well. But overall, I think the project's in the right direction.
But going back to your comment, Mr. Simonian, how does that affect design? It just obviously doesn't affect design.
It doesn't affect the design. It reduces the grading, which is
so you're talking about eliminating the back portion.
It gets rid of It gets rid of grading all this dirt right in here.
Okay.
Just so
we don't end up grading any of this.
So staff can understand, if we have required light and air for the bedroom, certainly, and how would this plan avoid the issues of flow coming down the hill and the ratios of how much distance you need between the retaining wall and the back wall?
Well, no matter what you do, you're creating a slab which is at 970, and the bedrooms are at 975, so it's 5 feet below it according to these drawings.
Right.
And so, of course, some sort of a curb wall would have to be, debris wall would have to be created, and then that setback would have to be set from the toe of that. Or would be able to access and get light elsewhere, but it's a concept to bring up as we look at these projects now, because now we have a combined kind of approach: site planning, reduction of grading as much as possible,
right,
and then design. And it's kind of nice that it's all coming in the design review board, because we're able to really assess these things holistically. And it's just a concept that's been done many times in LA, and it's being done today. So I'm just bringing it up, and it's not so much of this specific project. It's something for us to start considering. But since this is front of us, it really could prevent quite a bit of grading for it to be worked out. And you're asking a very technical question, I realize that. I don't think just eliminating this and moving it on the rooftop will be able to answer your question. There's then needs to be the next level of, okay, now how do we provide the toe of slope setback that's required by code, and how do we provide line there?
Well, I think just simply raising this up to 975.
That right there reduces 5 feet.
You'll have access from the bedroom, but you won't have access from the kitchen. All the space would be.
Well, we can, let the applicant present those, because, having a deck is not as usable as having an accessible area from the kitchen. This is more accessible and if we eliminate that, there's no literal.
I'm just thinking like a homeowner for a second, and I think your points are very well taken. I think see a roof deck being something that we should look at in these types of projects as they come to us. But in this particular project, I'm thinking, let's say the homeowner wants to have a barbecue. I can't foresee them going to their roof deck up 5 steps versus just coming straight out of their kitchen. So the amenities provided by this type of design, I think, might be a little bit better without a full redesign, and I think that maybe that'd be something that we would consider.
Again, what I'm saying is that it's a concept as we move forward.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I 100% agree with you that it's a good
we're
concept.
We're going to see more and more of these as the upslope, because as the economy heats up, a lot of these reminiscent sites end up coming back to us.
If I can recommend the staff include this as a condition as well as a direction for future research with building and safety and working with architects on similar projects. We've approved so many of these kind of well-like backyards, it would be hard to step back from it now, but in the future we could, either through changes to the guidelines or through just direction of how to help people make their project better projects for the clients.
I don't think I'll go against the design guidelines.
Well, certainly.
No, we might.
A lot of grading.
Right,
So
which
a lot
is
of
what
cost.
the design, hillside design guidelines
You
have.
can't right now until the chair lets
Yeah.
you. So.
I'll open it up in a minute.
So anyways, it's a concept.
Okay,
for
so
us.
we'll put it as a consideration for now, and then staff will take it as a.
Yeah, it's, again, I'm having this discussion because this is going to happen more and more, so it's not so much.
I totally agree with you. I just want to make sure
No, I don't have
the way we write it up is
an
accurate.
issue of adding the roof deck, because I think it's very simple to do. You know.
Why don't we leave that to the applicant, because you know, what we have is what we need to approve. We can always suggest it. Ms. Palmer, you have a question?
I just wanted to add to that comment that Mr. Malikian had in that upper retaining wall area because it's so high. Rather than necessarily putting a planter across the bottom or hanging over the top, maybe a couple large box-type vertical ones where you could put some vertical trees. And then have some planting going over the top, so you've got two different dimensions going.
Well, he's got a wall and a planter against this high wall. So he's got a planter right in here. So he could plant
So
substantial.
I'm talking about in the upper.
On the upper top,
Yes.
yeah. I mean,
Well, no, we're talking about this.
yeah, I thought we are, but she's talking about that.
Because right now, this is going to get covered somehow,
Yeah.
right? So this is going to get covered. So this is the one that we're looking at, and you're staring at this large wall.
Well,
So
he-
I'm just kind of thinking,
He can have a little
I'm just saying,
planter with
it doesn't
vines
have to be
growing.
just across the bottom. It could
Right.
have like a
Well, we can condition a vine.
structural element going up.
Okay. I didn't give the opportunity for Mr. Hagopian to rebuttal, and I'm going to ask you before I make my comments.
May I approach?
Sure. Open the public hearing.
I didn't exactly understand Mr. Simonian's suggestion. If we have to, my understanding, the way he was explaining this room here that gets light, this will be blocked. And I don't know, this will be blocked. And the fire department needs an access to this bedroom.
It certainly will affect your program. I mean, no one's saying you have to have 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms. So a lot of homes are built upslope that have less bedrooms. So it's kind of a self-imposed hardship. So I don't buy that argument. I frankly
Yeah,
don't.
but if he-
I do think, again, it wasn't so much pointing towards this project. But
Okay.
again, I think
Okay.
if you want to have 4 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms and a kitchen that opens up to the deck, and you put all those in a program and you say, well, I need to have this backyard because now I need to have my 4th bedroom and have light, then yes, you have created a self-imposed hardship, and now in order to have that 4th bedroom, you do need it. So that's why I don't want to start that discussion, because I don't think it leads to the outcome that we're trying to achieve.
Thank you, Mr. Simoni. Your point is well taken, and
I would like to
certainly-
also talk about Mr. Malikian's comment about this room and this window and this window. The function of this room is that we enter here and we have a walk-in closet here. I thought, whatever we have done here took months and months of thinking and designing and finding solutions. Like this stairs here, we have to avoid not having more than 3-foot high retaining wall. If we are right in the setback, in the meantime, we have a ditch next to that. How to push this back and open up here? I will suggest to raise this wall here and have a higher planter to hide this wall here. That is more practical. Otherwise, I will study this to see, is it possible to push it there? If it works with the zoning code height, retaining wall height issues, fine, okay.
Mr. Hagopian, clarify the material on the garage. That precision block, is that exposed?
Which one, this one?
That and this wall and the side wall.
Yeah, these are decorative concrete block.
The block, yeah, the smooth.
I think
It's
we
smooth
have.
decorative, because that's what I get when I look at these.
I think we have. Made in the
I didn't see
elevations.
it, but want to make sure it's that
Okay,
precision. Not just split face. I know you call out
Retaining
split
wall.
face. That's split face, the retaining walls in the back. It doesn't talk about,
It's a typical old retaining walls.
I know, but what I'm looking at the plan is more of a smooth precision block, which they make.
No, it will be all the same, which is
Smooth, or split face.
split face.
Do you have an objection to make that?
No, I can make it
Well,
burnished.
still, yeah, that's what I'm
Burnished,
getting,
yeah.
burnished, yeah.
It's more
That
expensive.
goes well with the design.
It's a little bit shiny and it's
Yeah,
more
but you can
expensive.
pick a color that,
Okay,
yeah, because that's really adds a little more to the design.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
if we could add the caveat that we think the code discourages exposed precision block in the hillside setting. Personally, on a modern building like this, it often looks better than the split face, and I think the code isn't,
So what do we?
So what we'd like to do is just research that. We could take that as a condition
that's considered
pending code research, if the board agrees.
Scored concrete and
Yeah.
surface.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agobian. I think my colleagues mentioned all the comments. One thing I want to mention, Mr. Agobian, is that we appreciate the fact that you pushed the building from the knoll, reduced the grading, reduced the house size. And I do concur with Mr. Malikian that the canopy should be a little more substantial. And one question I didn't ask you, is that canopy solid or is it louvered? Is it open, is it open on top? If you can come up, I'll open it up.
Canopy of the windows.
The canopies that you have.
I was
on
thinking
top.
to have it like grill in
Grill,
an
so
angle.
it's a louvered.
Yeah.
Louvered, okay. Thank you. I think the project has improved substantially, especially I'm satisfied with the grading amount. The one concern I think we've discussed, and I brought it up at first, which is the oak tree survival. How do we go on doing that, Mr. J?
You're asking a big question. I don't know. I think we could put a condition in that the board is concerned about those trees. Landscaping is supposed to be maintained for 5 years after a hearing. If the trees are sick or dying within that period, we could establish a plan, or we could just follow the standard city replacement plan. You could dictate, I think it's 2 for 1 generally.
Okay.
The trees lost, Member Palmer? Or if trees are removed,
Health of the tree.
I think value on the health. There's other cities do 2 to 1. The county does, I believe. But
and I think the board could ask to have,
But the fact that these are right, the swale is running through the trunk.
that sounds bad.
well, we got 2
Well,
trees in
there's-
question.
3,
I think
stairs and the 2 that are on the swale.
I think there's a couple issues here with this, and that one issue is if in fact these trees are not going to survive, and I think the consensus on the board is from experience that they're not going to survive, then when we're restricting the design with the trees in place, maybe we and we have to make sure this is okay with all the departments in the city, but maybe we just understand and give up the fact that we're going to lose these trees and then design around the loss of the tree and replace the tree proactively with a 2 to 1 or 3 to 1, whatever.
The city may not agree with, they don't want to lose the.
No, I understand, but losing the oak tree, for me, losing the oak tree a year from now and having a stairway that seems a little massive and protruding into the front setback is something that maybe we can consider at this stage, and if it's okay with the city, then we go down the route. But if the city, doesn't want the oak tree to be lost, then we have to look at it from a different perspective, right?
Right.
But my understanding of the indigenous tree mitigation rules that I read that were attached to this the pruning's okay. Loss of the tree has standard repercussions, and I'm okay with that. But if the consensus is that we're going to lose the tree, then maybe we can adjust design. I don't like losing trees. I don't want to see the tree lost, but I think if it's a given or it's a 90% probability because of the swells
Well,
there.
it's not. It's the arborist, city arborist has a different opinion than we have. And we know for a fact that many times the plans that are presented to the arborist are these small plans and may not be interpreted to the extent that we think this is.
Well, what I would recommend is a two-pronged condition. The first being that we will share the board's concern about the fate of these 3 trees with the arborist, showing large plans.
Yeah.
If the arborist, for some reason, as our city expert, believes that the trees will survive, then prong B can come in if the trees do not survive within the 5-year of the approval, that we go into a tree replacement plan with a 2-for-1 ratio on the site at locations that are appropriate to the future health of the new trees.
It's up to the arborist to make that final decision. We're not the experts in that, but maybe there'd be stricter mitigation measures for this site, but I think having her re-look at this would be beneficial.
Okay, so the condition will be to share the board's concerns with the arborist, get a final city take on whether the health of the trees appears to be in danger or not. If she agrees that it's in danger, then we'll work with the standard mitigation measures for tree replacement on a proactive basis.
Yeah, that's my question, and to my colleagues is: do we allow there to be a proactive change? Because I've heard that the stairs are a concern, and they can be pushed back to the property line. I tend to agree that would help the overall design. But if they're pushed back to the property line, those trees are more in danger than they would be under this design. So if the arborist comes back and says, no, thinking about it a second time, yeah, those trees are going to be gone, therefore, per the indigenous tree guidelines, you have to replace them, a 2-to-1 ratio. I'm fine with that. I don't know if that's something that's specified in the version that I reviewed for this project. But if that's the case, then I would want to think about the stairway and pushing it back. The applicant has indicated they would like to push it back and have the ability to push it back to the property line. Various board members have mentioned that might be an issue, so why can't we be proactive with that? So
and we could also, when we discuss this with the arborist as part of the condition, we can share the idea that the staircase may move to make sure that doesn't raise any additional concerns, since she didn't have the chance to review that concept.
Well, no. The idea would be if the tree is going to be in danger, and if that tree is just not going to survive, then let's plant a couple of more new trees.
Yeah, no.
And
I think I understand everything you're saying. I think ultimately we need to leave the authority in the hands of the arborist.
Of course.
And we'll do what we can to, if the trees can be saved, I think everyone agrees that's the best solution.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Those were my comments, and I know I'm not supposed to speak too much on trash and all that, but I'm going to bring it up again because I know Mr. Churchill's concerned. It's right in the front door, Mr. Hagopian. I mean, I don't think the owners, want to walk through a trash area to go up there. I mean, you have to relocate it somewhere. Even if we say, okay, I'm fine with it, but eventually nobody's going to use that. We know that for a fact. So it's going to end up in the driveway, so we need to find a reasonable location. I mean, one thought I had, if the stair is going to shift, I mean, maybe you could squeeze it under the stair if it's possible. I don't know if it's going to work, but I would like you to reconsider the location. With that, let's go over the conditions.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, do we need the conditions that are published reread, or
Conditioned
the ones that are printed? Conditions 1
The
through 8.
presumption is your previous
Yes.
conditions have
Previous
been met
conditions.
unless you disagree with that, and then.
Well, I'm assuming we agree the conditions have been met,
Yes.
Except regarding the trash.
except regarding the trash, and and we'll make it as a consideration.
And there was the additional staff consideration about the stairs, but I think now that's resolved in terms of the railings and the stairs just having the same.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have a condition to ask the architect to study the possibility of moving the stairs closer to the property line, creating more of a buffer between the stairs and a landscape buffer between the stairs and the driveway. I'll get back to the tree in a second. We're going to choose a single railing type that will be used at the railings on the house as well as those on the adjoining stairway, preferably horizontal railings similar to those in the first proposal. I'm not sure, based on the architect's explanation, if the board still wants to move the window, create symmetry in the right bay of windows over the garage door.
I think there is a solution for it, but
Is there consensus?
up to the
Yeah, I think you can make it work. I'm
There's
looking
no
at the plan.
consensus.
I'm assuming that plan. That's a balcony on top that is recessed, if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken.
I think the issue is the location of the closet.
I know, but
so-
you could shift the whole thing. I mean,
Okay, so if there's consensus, we'll
Yeah,
just
for-
keep that as a condition.
we could shift this quicker, you know. Unless you have another suggestion, Mr.
No, I mean, there are definitely solutions. I mean, you just have to, I don't want
But we don't have to solve
design the
it.
interior of the plan, but, just moving this over in line with this,
Yeah.
you can create a little closet here, push
Yeah,
this
gotcha.
back, widen this, and add more closet there, and you have a closet.
Yeah.
I mean, just so you're not losing a closet.
Okay, so we'll keep the condition to maintain the symmetry of the original window patterns at the bay above the garage door. The metal canopies, we're going to ask for them to be heightened to just give a more solid appearance that's compatible with the design of the house. The chimney at the side of the house, we're going to have a condition to find another design solution that avoids the proposed boxy projection at the chimney.
Well, that's mainly because of the meandering of the stairs
yeah.
around the corner. So if we can have it more,
I mean, if he can work around
So
it,
if
that's
if
fine.
the stairs go away, you're okay with the chimney?
yeah, I mean,
We're okay.
Okay, so so that condition is contingent on the stairs being moved, so. There was discussion, or conditions, or I wrote consideration, but it sounds like it's a condition now, to increase the amount of landscaping in the flat rear yard by introducing additional planters and possibly deeper, larger planter boxes that could allow for a more vertical planting material. We have a condition or a consideration, I believe, to study how the trash can locations could be moved to take them away from the front entry, possibly in conjunction with the move of the stairway to the property toward the property line.
That was a consideration,
Consideration? Okay.
not a condition.
Okay. I wasn't sure if this was a condition or consideration. The idea Board Member Palmer raised about changing the retaining wall configuration.
The consideration.
Okay,
Soften
and if let me just reconfigure the retaining wall to the left side of the driveway to increase the amount of planting area and soften the entrance toward
Just
the.
wrap it around rather than just coming straight down.
Right, so there's more of a curve leading to the driveway.
It's a consideration.
Okay, consideration.
Because that may, it all depends on the slope at that turn. There may be a little issue there.
It's okay. We have a consideration to ask the architect to study the possibility of adding a roof deck to the project to allow for a reduction in grading at the rear, and also a staff direction to see if this is something that can be studied in the future as an alternative to the deep rear wells of a backyard.
And to minimize grading, actually, it's mostly to minimize.
That's the intent.
Then that's the intent, is
I'm
to
sorry.
minimize grading.
To minimize grading, yeah. We have a condition to use precision block at the base with the caveat that staff will review the guidelines in the zoning code to make sure that's acceptable. And then finally, we have a condition for staff to consult with the arborist about the 3 trees that have been called out by the board, studying the full-size plans to see if there are alternatives or if there's agreement that looking at those plans, the trees might be lost, in which case the arborist might accept their removal and provide a mitigative plan for new tree planting.
And if so, allow for redesign on the stairs.
Okay.
I think our intent is to go hand in hand with that.
Yeah.
Did we mention
then-
about the railing?
Yeah. The railings are going to be the same,
So I have-
consistent.
I wanted to
Go ahead.
just one more consideration, and that's up to you guys. So imagine that if we move this over, right, if that is possible.
Okay.
If you look at this whole volume, to me, I think this thing is really nice, and I think it makes a presence, and it's a floating box. I think by moving this over, regrading this, these 2 walls that are supporting that, it actually kills the whole concept of this volume being suspended. If it's possible, once you move this over, these 2 walls, so that volume is projected out and it's just a kind of a floating, if that is possible.
Kind of a cantilevering.
It's just a cantilevered box that it's there, and I think it would definitely it will make this a stronger
It's not
statement.
cantilevering right now.
It's not cantilevering because it's
on the
basically
side, right.
supported on the walls, and it just can basically just. Then you got this little funny details with the siding coming on top of it.
And that cantilever would extend to the
Just-
location of the
it
stairs,
seemed-
not forward over the
No,
driveway.
we're not changing it. All I'm saying is just get rid of these 2 column walls.
Make it flush
there.
with the garage,
Right.
with the flush door. with
Yeah,
the-
just the walls will be
of the
flush.
garage door, flush. Yeah. Gives you a little more play there.
So the consideration would be to consider removing the 2 walls to either side of the garage door, producing a cantilevered effect to create a hovering volume. Okay.
Right now, it's like 2 pockets on each side. All right. You have it all?
The one above the one.
We don't do it.
First, we need a motion on the environmental.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the environmental.
I'll second.
Okay, that would be Board Member Palmer. Board Member Charchian?
Second.
Board Member Simonian?
Yes.
Oh,
Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
And Chairperson,
Yes.
Thank you, Mardian.
and for the record, that was a yes, not a
Not a second. But technically did second. Okay, now motion to approve the project with conditions. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion. Motion to approve with conditions.
Second,
Okay.
please.
I'll second it.
The roll
Okay,
call.
that was a motion by Board Member Charchian, second by Board Member Simonian. Board Member Charchian?
Yes.
Board Member Simonian?
Yes.
Board Member Palmer?
Yes.
Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Chairperson Mardian?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, let's move on. Second case.
Hello. How are you? Soon, I'm sure. We'll help you with that. We don't have enough chairs here. Are you moving?
I'll take my notes somewhere else. Who's Grace then?
Plans behind.
Yeah. Is there yours, Jay?
Yeah.
Switch places here.
evening, members of the Design Review Board. The second and last item on the agenda is for a proposed project at 1407 5th Street. The project involves the development of a 2-story, 5-unit residential townhouse-style development over a semi-subterranean garage in the R2250 zone. The project is located on a relatively flat 12,500 square foot developed lot with 3 existing single-story multifamily units. Within the semi-subterranean garage, 14 parking spaces are provided, 10 of which are within 5 individual 2-car garages with direct access to each unit. It is a Spanish colonial revival style and is primarily surrounded by single-story multifamily uses, although 2- and 3-story multifamily uses are located within the same block. The project site is situated mid-block with street access on 5th Street on a 50 by 250 lot. All 5 units are within one building, roughly centered on the lot, to create a walkway for entrances on the west side and private open space on the east side. The Unit 1, the front unit, directly faces 5th Street, while the remaining units are located directly behind Unit 1. There is one driveway to the semi-subterranean garage. It's located on the eastern side of the lot. Each unit features 3 bedrooms and ranges inside from about 1,900 to 2,200 square feet in size. A large common outdoor space is located at the rear of the site and will provide a usable seating amenity for residents of the units. Additionally, each unit has private outdoor space, both at the ground level and at the roof deck level. Most of the private patios are oriented to the east side of each unit. The rear unit has an additional private open space at the rear with a large covered patio and balcony. This area faces the common outdoor space, but is separated by a large landscape buffer. Each unit also has small private balconies on the second level. Landscaping is distributed throughout the site, including the common open space at the rear and at the rooftop decks. Various shrubs and ground cover are located in and around the buildings. The selected plants appear to be appropriate for the design and consist of drought-resistant and native plant materials. The new building will be 2 stories and 31 feet in height. Single-story buildings surround the site. However, as I mentioned earlier, 2- and 3-story buildings are located on the block. The design of the building has massing variations that maintain a consistent architectural language throughout the project. The projections and recesses emphasize each individual unit and provide a rhythm along the facades. The massing is broken up by balconies, stairwell, projections throughout the building that help break the long horizontal facades. The front of the building includes a round stair tower that gives the building a focal point and adds variety to the more typical rectangular shape. And the variety of materials and details help reinforce the reading of different volumes. The roof form and roof deck of each unit reinforces the overall design and provides visual interest. The roof trellises are open and will have limited visibility from the street, and therefore don't add any sense of mass to the design. Additionally, these decks are pulled back from the edges, preventing occupants from looking down towards adjacent properties. The surrounding neighborhood is comprised of a mix of architectural styles, including 1-, 2-, and 3-story multifamily developments. This Spanish colonial revival style is compatible with the overall neighborhood. The building features beige smooth stucco, dark brown wood accent colors, recessed windows, wrought iron, precast concrete moldings, and Spanish tile roofing materials. The stair tower provides the building with the front focal point, and the upper windows help break the volume and recall traditional towers on Spanish colonial revival homes. The stone veneer is applied at the base of the building and at different locations along the elevations, breaking up the building's volume and helping delineate each unit. There are fiberglass bronze color casement windows. In addition, the private patios will have sliding doors with similar details. The windows will be recessed within the openings, and the shape of the windows include both arched and rectangular. Staff recommends that the board condition the project to redesign the band course below the upper windows of the stair tower to achieve better proportions and separate this feature from the adjacent roof cornice. With that, staff recommends approval of the project. I do want to point out that several public comments in the form of emails were received, and they should have been passed out. So I just want to make sure that you guys all got those.
We saw that.
Great.
One question I had, one of the letters talks about historical home. Is this pertaining to this or their historical home?
It was pertaining to this, but there's no
There's no
historic
historical issue.
at this location.
I have a question.
Go ahead. Sure.
Staff, is there a reason why we don't have renderings as to the neighboring homes and their positioning?
Renderings of the neighboring homes?
Yeah, usually when we have, where are they?
Yeah, we recognize that this rendering in general isn't
Okay, the
up
outliers.
to speed with renderings that we like to see, and things like this happen sometimes in the effort to get
Okay, I
this to the
see.
hearing.
Yeah, microfiche.
So you see it on the site plan? Or?
Yeah, I see it on the site plan, sorry.
I have a question. It appears that the wall on the east side coming from the property line, front setback, is that a wall?
The existing or proposed?
I don't know. Just shows what looks like a wall from the pilaster towards the street. On the east side. Maybe the architect can answer that.
Yeah, it should be for front setback purposes, but.
Any questions, board members? Mr. Sweeney, any questions?
Is the lift from the garage just accessing the rear common open space? Is that the intent of it?
Pardon?
The lift from the elevator, from the lift from the garage at the rear of the garage, is it just accessing the common open space?
It would access the common outdoor space as well as the access to each unit as well.
And,
It's got a pathway.
Yeah, there's a
with the
separation
concrete.
between that back patio and the common outdoor space that could bring
that's
you
all,
access to
that's
the
all
west.
at level 500?
At the first floor level of the units, yes.
Yeah, I had that same concern, I think, of it loading into the common area.
Yeah, it's a common solution to these 5-packs and 6-packs, rather than having the lift at the front of the building where we have all sorts of other issues. We've seen many projects, many of which are done at administrative design review level, where the lift is at the rear. And when that happens, we try our best to get it incorporated into the landscape and the usability of that space.
I have one follow-up question then. Is the guest parking also designated as a handicap space?
I believe so, yes.
So the only guest parking is a handicap guest parking?
No, he's supposed to have more than that, 0.25 per unit. That's the.
They need
that
one.
1.25.
So they need one guest parking spot.
Sorry.
They need one guest parking
One
spot?
space.
But this is going to be restricted to a handicapped space?
There are
2 handicap.
2 handicap.
So my question is, what the requirement is that they have one guest parking spot, correct? Mm-hmm. And is the requirement that they have 2 handicap spaces?
I think that's a requirement for ADA that,
We'll ask
We'll get to it.
Okay.
Anything else? Mr. Malikan? Ms. Palmer? One clarification, I don't know, maybe I should ask the applicant. Any other questions before I open the public hearing?
No?
No? Okay, I'll open the public hearing. I'm going to go with the architect, Mr. Hamlet Zohrabian.
Possibly these are wells.
Good evening. My name is Hamlet Zohrabian. I'm the project architect. And my address is, for the record, 3467 Ocean View Boulevard, Suite B, Glendale 91208. Before I begin, there was a question about the rendering. I truly apologize. When we gave the disk again, that rendering that you see there is a preliminary rendering. That's how we start. So normally when we put it on the disk, is there. This is the finished rendering. So with your permission, I would appreciate it if you can distribute this. process of going back and forth and checking and balancing and all of that thing is so long, takes so long time. Somehow on the disk, it's just a preliminary rendering. But this is including the landscaping and the setting that there is there to the best of the renderer. I think that will explain a little bit more as far as the detail and how the setting is. And Kirsten, this is also.
Oh, thank you.
Copy of it, just in case. Well, Kirsten explained it very well. We have 5 units, two-story each. Living spaces in the bottom level, and then you have the bedrooms on the second floor. We also have private parking and private patio spaces on east side where they're sharing. I mean, they're being used, and each unit itself is long. It's about 38 feet. It allows us to have a very nice open space within the unit itself. You have living and dining on one side, that the kitchen is centrally located, where you have actually a pronounced sort of a family room, which it opens up to the private patios. As far as the lift that came about, I mean, the lift is just out what we are required to do. The lift is supposed to make the access possible to bring, provide the access to the parking space to the deck. That's how the code is requiring us to do. And as far as the parking spaces that we're talking about, when we are required to have only one guest parking, but that guest parking has to be marked. Then when you're required to have a guest parking, that one guest parking has to be handicap, and also you provide one handicap as well for the units themselves. That's the new code. However, if they are in a enclosed private parking setting, then you don't need the access to that particular private access, private setting where we have the two-car enclosed garages. You don't have an access there. In other words, private. For the ADA. So we have 4 parking spaces outside, is because we're required to have 2.5 parking spaces for each unit. So we're providing
They're
2.
3-bedroom, or because they're
Yes, they're more over 1,600 square feet.
Okay.
And number of bedrooms.
Yeah. So how they're used is the overflow. So that means if their guest is coming, those 2 other ones can be used randomly for the guest.
So if you're over 1,600, you're required to have 2.5 or 3-bedroom. Which one is it?
Both of them. 3-bedroom and.
Not either. I can look that up.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Sure, go ahead. So I've seen this type of development firsthand, and I'm assuming these are going to be for sale units?
Yes.
Okay. I think actually you had mentioned. So if these are for sale units, you're not going to be allocating spot number 11 and 12 to a unit?
You mean in the garage?
Yes.
We're going by whatever is required. Right now, it's not required to have allocation there.
So in other words, and maybe this is maybe too technical of a question at this juncture, but you will be selling these units. They would obviously be deeded with the garage spaces.
Yes.
But you then have these 4 additional parking spots. They're designated as 11, 12, 13, and 14. My question is, on 11 and 12, which are the 2 spots that are not designated handicap, are those going to be deeded to any of the units?
I think that's something that they will definitely have to address in their CCNR. A lot of these issues that are kind of in the middle, and there's no clear answer for it, and it has to do with the operational of the entire facility. They have to address that. I don't know how they're going to address it.
And I think the way that they're going to address it is that they're going to deed it to one of the units. And if they deed it to one of the units, then those spaces will not be open for guest parking. And so we have a guest parking that is going to be marked handicap. And I don't know about you, but when I go visit and I see handicap, I'm not going to park there. So we effectively don't have a guest parking.
Yes, Mr. Chargent, this is, we've discussed this several times, but I know this does not relate to design, he has to resolve that. But when we've asked for this 1.5 fraction, when you have a fraction and how you divide it up, it's something that I don't know if there's a clear answer to it or not at this point. Yeah, it's a dilemma.
Okay.
But in this particular case, he has to deal with the building code and however. So if it doesn't work, then, he's back to us. So it's really, as long as design is not affected on the exterior.
And maybe just a side note from a subdivision side of things, when they do come in for a tentative draft map for this, we will ask that the CCNRs assign each one of those parking spaces, so that'll be required at the time of map application.
So I think his question is more, how do you divide the 1.5? Whatever.
Well, no, that's
They'll have to figure that out.
that's not actually the question. The question is if they're going to be assigned, then the only space is this handicap space, which is a guest parking handicap space, and the other handicap space is assigned to one of the units typically, because that adds value, and then you're going to have parking considerations. So,
Wouldn't it be just take 4 of them and divide it into fractions and have everybody own share of it, and then CCNR deal with it?
Well, we shouldn't get into that. I mean,
Yeah,
the
it's
CCNRs are gonna
outside
give
of our scope, but as
know,
far
it's
as
not a-
as far as the public comments, a lot of them are on parking, and I want the public to understand that
Well,
these are outside the scope of what we have to do.
Mentioning that, I mean, just for the record, the proposed project meets parking requirement. That's what we see, and that's what we're going to approve.
Right.
Mr. Simonian.
I just wanted to clarify on that one issue, Mr. Zarabian.
Yes.
That common open space area in the rear, is the elevation to 500 similar to, let's say, the finished floor elevations for Unit 5, 4, or 3?
Yes, they're in the same level.
Okay. And then those planters that are on the north side, next to Unit number 5's private open space,
Yes.
are those just on basically planters that pop up above the 500 elevation, or are they going down?
Okay, that's how we've basically discussed with the staff, during the process. Let me bring you to your attention to the section that will explain it a little bit. If we go to the section sheet, which is A5, that there is in a section through actually that particular area in the back. So what we've done, we had to depress the deck 24 inches. That's what the requirement is. So that area there is going to be level, and we're going to have grass and landscaping and so on and so forth, right? So that area there is going to be level with the deck itself. Then the idea was to have more landscaping to screen off our loggia. So how would you do that? You would provide mature trees there and landscaping. So we didn't want to have very tall planters there. So first row, we made it 42 inches, and then the other one, we lowered it. So it just creates some sort of more of an entrance there. And the lower ones, they're nice for sitting at the edge of it, having conversation, and it just kind of blends more with the landscaping. That's what the idea was, and that's how we have, provided that. So that's the intent, was to integrate more the seating area and everything together.
Okay. Mrs. R. and Mrs. Since I have you up here, clarify something for us. You have a garage that is sitting back in here 5 feet, I'm assuming, on each side?
Yes.
Okay. Then when I look at the site plan, then this planter is like what, 2 feet? So is my deck cantilevering over this grade? Because you have these little sections.
Yeah.
It shows wider. The reason I'm questioning it, it's a design issue on your part. You have these stair shafts, and if I take this line, the stair shaft, with this garage line, this part of the stair is going to be encroaching in this area. And then you come up to the 3rd floor, and that's my other question. This line is different. It's not stacking. It's sitting back.
Yeah,
correct?
because that's the intent. We
Okay,
basically
sitting back.
stepped back, in other words.
I understand, but when you come here, what happens to this landing? What happens to this as I come up? Because if I'm reading this plan right, I'm coming up here, this is my line, but this part is in the walkway.
Well, no, not really.
Well,
I
what's
can
the
explain.
dimension here? You can come up.
I can
here.
explain. I mean, if I can approach, I can explain.
So that planter is about 2 feet, so these sections you have.
The planter is 2 feet.
I think it's
My chair's on Mr. Malakian.
Because you have these little sections.
Yeah, see, that's what it is. See, we have stairs that goes down from this side.
I got it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So when it comes over here, there is an intermediate landing on over here that is gonna actually, see, the stair comes down like this.
Well, it's not, I mean, if I'm reading this, it's not, because if I'm reading this correct, this is somewhere in here.
Yeah.
Well, is this stacking up?
Transition.
Is this stacking up? They're not stacking up. correct.
These are stacking up
These
in the
are
bottom.
stacking
But
up?
the stair that comes down from there.
So the
is
stairs
goes
in
up.
here, but
Yes.
that doesn't show the stairs being there. So you need to clarify that.
I have to
mean,
clarify
yeah,
that,
you
yeah.
need, because
We have-
that
Yeah,
affects the design of the.
Yeah, well, I have to clarify that. The stair that you see here that is set back also this is why we have these elements.
Yeah, I see that, I see that, it's
Yeah.
clear.
That's
But
why
I'm
just
not
using-
questioning that, I mean, the landing you have to work out on that floor, but I'm questioning how it's coming up from the garage
Yeah.
to that, because you have 8 feet in here. You have 8, whatever it is, 7, 8 feet, varies. Then when I come up, to the garage,
yeah.
this is only 5 feet.
Yes.
So if this is 5 feet, let's assume this is my 5 feet,
Yeah.
this area is in here.
Well, it won't affect here, but it will affect the garage itself. We
Yes,
have
it
like-
will affect,
we
that's
have-
what I'm getting,
Yeah, Yeah,
at.
I mean, this needs to be tight and, coordinated with it.
Well, if the 5-foot line is there, how are you going to tighten it?
Well, it's because you have oversized garages here. Garages your reports up 20 feet. We have 22 already. So those are things that
long
it
as
can
you
be
can make it
resolved.
work.
Yeah, it will be resolved in the garage, what I'm saying. It will not affect the building outside.
22.
But it's something that I wish I could,
Yeah, I wish you had the section from that would have clarified my major comment was that, actually. Any other questions to Mr. Zarabian before I?
Garage dimension issue. The garages on the drawings are 20 feet wide rather than 22. You don't have that room to play there.
Okay, that's the new one. Here's 22. That's the latest one.
This is 20.
Is there a problem with making the parking structure have less than
What
the
is that? Is
5-foot
that 20?
setback?
16. The opening 16, that's
No,
20.
no.
That's 20, that's 20.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
But can't you just make the parking structure a little wider?
We can. I mean, I have to, I have to massage the parking spaces themselves inside. So what I'm saying is, the garage needs to be adjusted for that.
Yeah, to make the stair shaft work.
It
on
will
these
be,
units,
yeah, I mean,
I think you can make it work because you have here, what is that dimension, 14?
yeah,
So you could literally
we
somehow.
can push
it.
there and then stay. We have enough, in other words, square
Yeah,
footage.
you can make it work, it's just you need to look at it, I don't want you to affect the design and come back to us for that purpose.
I appreciate it.
While you're trying to make that work, when you back out of this garage, you're right at the wall of the trash. There's no way to get out with an 8-foot space and turn. So maybe that could be brought back a ways.
Back a bit.
It's not like a corner parking spot. You don't have 10 feet.
Okay. Right. See, right now, we have 5 feet over here, which we can actually bring the wall
Right.
out. That's why
I
we
just
didn't-
think it's a bad, both those garages.
Okay.
Mr. Zarabian?
What's the material here?
That's going to be sort of a tile.
Okay, and this side?
And this side, there's no tile there, but lately, we were encouraged to have at the entrances the same material as that, to break up this.
We just haven't
concrete.
called it out yet.
Is there?
We just called it out as a tile, thin set tile.
I just didn't see it on the
Yeah.
plans, that's why I'm
Okay.
asking. And is this a wall here?
Well, it's not a tall wall, it's just a curved. The wall begins from here. Wall begins from here.
I just needed that clarified.
Mr. Robbins? Yeah. It's hard to tell here, but how wide is that driveway, the main driveway throat? That's
This, 14.
14?
14.
And that's the clear dimension, is 14?
Yes.
Okay.
What's the minimum driveway width? 11?
That's coming down from the ramp, it's 10, I think.
Yeah, within the garage, it could be 10 too.
What's the setback in here? What's the setback? This is like 2 feet or so?
Which one?
2.5?
That would be 2.5 feet here, yes. But on the other side, I have about
Parallel
4 feet.
parking.
What's it?
Parallel parking, is it 8 foot 6?
Yes.
You have these private gardens here,
Mhm.
private areas.
It's 8 foot 6
It's pretty
or not?
clear on these how you access them. It's in the back.
Drawing there.
And the circular stair, does it have a...
Access in the back, right there, there's a
This one?
structure, that's one.
Driveway's 11.
Right next to the AC unit, which are they going to be...
They'll be closed, they'll
Closed
be-
in?
Yeah.
Below roof line?
Yes,
Nine?
these are right now below roof
Oh,
line,
except
and
this
here
one.
will be sort of a wall over here to just screen it.
9 width.
But from outside,
And so
you
there's no visibility here?
no, no,
For
no.
parallel. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? I want to open the public hearing. Okay.
I got one more question. And the private roof decks are within kind of the middle of the mansard roofs?
Yes, they're away from the edge of the roof, about 7 or 8 feet at least. Actually, more than that.
Okay. And how wide is that middle roof area?
The middle roof area there would be, I imagine about 8 feet,
Okay.
with the exception of the front one, which is a little bit
A
wider.
little wider.
Yes.
The balconies are 2 feet?
Which balconies?
All the balconies?
All the balconies? They're 2 feet, yeah, but they're not required to be, in other words, the 4 feet.
You have the roof deck area.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any separation from people being on the roof and wandering all over the roof, or are those roof decks?
Well, the roof deck, I've spec'd whenever you see the checkered pattern there,
Yes.
that's where it says what the spec is there, which will be
They're
tile.
accessible for
Around
No, I'm
each unit.
just saying,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
it accessible to walk all over the entire roof?
Is there a
No, not the entire roof. Each party walls are coming off, all the way up to the top of the, yes. They're supposed to be 30 inches above the roof level. So between the units, you have an enclosure.
There's a note on here about security bars. Do we really have?
Security bars is not a security bar. This we call a security bar. It's just an aesthetically,
Got it, okay.
we call it a security bar. There's no security bar.
Call them decorative grills.
Decorative grill. That sounds better.
Question that.
In actuality, they used to be the whole day, so now it's a decorative.
Okay. Any other questions? I don't know. No? Thank you, Mrs. Zarabi. I'm sure we'll have a few more for you.
Okay.
But I'm going to go to the public now. I have a neighbor, Ben Sauce. Sauce, okay.
Sorry, I'm coming from Palm Springs where I'm vacationing with my family, which is why I have my daughter here, because I could use the carpool lane to get here a little bit faster. So my house is
That's smart.
my house is the one here on the right at 1405 Fifth Street, and we moved in 3 years ago. It was actually short sale. The property was in disrepair, and we spent the last 3 years fixing it up, trying to make it a nice home to raise our kids in. So Jeanette, and then my other daughter Chloe, and we have a son on the way. So since the 1920s, when this neighborhood was being developed, it has been a multifamily area. So a lot of the homes, as you can see, are smaller for the Northwest Glendale area. So there definitely are, like Miss Asp had read, there are definitely some buildings on the street that are multifamily dwellings that are 2-story, 3-story high. The original ones, probably from the 1920s, most of them were homes like you're seeing in the picture here. And what has been happening since is because it's been a multifamily dwelling area, multi-units, I think developers over the years have been taking that for granted and have building far larger projects than what the street can hold. If what you can't see on this is a very large building across from the Pink House. Yeah, if you can keep turning it.
Keep turning?
Yeah. So those, I think, were more original. So we have this big structure that's on this end of the street. And then if you go the other way, on the corner of Sonora and 5th Street over there, there's another very large structure. You can kind of see it through those trees. Yeah.
This is closer to you. This is closer.
This is a few properties down.
Yeah, see, and then we have all these beautiful buildings that were built over the years that we really love looking at as we drive down our street. Anyway, so there has been so much development on the street, and actually those two vacant lots right there, it was just announced they want to put a 70-plus unit low-income senior housing complex on those 2 units. So needless to say, we have enough development on 5th Street. This is going to be my view right here looking out of my bedroom windows if this proposed project goes through. Where none of the residents are happy about this. We actually like the fact that there were some homes in one stretch of 5th Street that are still intact. So now seeing the prospect of yet another 1920s home being torn down to build this is not appealing to anybody that actually has to live on the street, rather than a developer who's going to make some good money off of these 5 units. We, as the neighbors, think that there could be better uses for this property. We're not opposed to development on it. We just don't think this is necessarily the best use for this property, and we would love for the board to have more than this as a possibility if we could have more planning sessions where we actually work with the owner of the property and try to figure out something that we feel fits better into the neighborhood than a 2-story, 5-unit townhouse that nobody wants on our street.
Thank you.
Have you had the opportunity to speak with the...
I personally have not. He has spoken with my wife. She said it was more of a, here's what I'm planning to do, rather than, hey, what are some options here? I think he showed him, showed her these plans as though, like, this is what I'm doing, not, hey, there's some options. Let's talk about some possibilities of what you think. What you can't see if you look at our properties, so my house and the house that's beside me there, the pink one on the right. So if you, I don't know if you can go a little bit further where you can look up the driveway.
Right? Or?
Yeah, to the right. So that's a shared driveway that goes up, and behind there are also 2 more houses. So we are 4 properties that share a driveway, and then our garages are kind of in the back that separate us from the 2 back houses. It was kind of a unique thing that they must have done in the 20s to do. Oh yeah, you can see it a little bit better there. So you see that there's, I can point it out to you if I can come through here.
Just don't touch the screen because then I'll kind of zoom in.
So this is my house. This is my neighbor's house. Then there's a common driveway with 4 garages here, and then there's 2 back houses here. This is a 1920s Spanish Revival. This house was actually, my property used to be one whole property. It was divided into 2, and then this house was built in the 1950s. My house was built in 1926. The owner of my house built this house for their son, and now the current residents are the 3rd owners of the house. They bought the house in 1986 when they moved here from China. And then Shauna and Brian Millman, they just bought their house last year. They just moved in. And then Jaime and his mom have been living in this house since 1976. So they've seen a lot of the changes that have been happening in the neighborhood, and they've given me a lot of background on what's been going on. So again, not opposed to it. What I'd love to see are 2 single-family homes that are there. We'd love to keep the first one that's already on the property, maybe make some renovations to it, add a bedroom if that would be, and then split the land like our house was split in the 50s and see a nice back house put back there, 3-4 bedroom. It could still be very profitable for the developer, for the owner, and it would keep the integrity of our neighborhood, which is more ideal for what we'd like to see.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay. I'm going to give the applicant the rebuttal. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Zahari?
Yes, again, my name is Hamlet Zoravias. I'm the project architect. This entire block is multifamily zoned neighborhood. And they're very seldom that you see any single-family houses. Even what our neighbor is referring to, if you go to assessor's office, they're just basically units. Our property right now, there are 4 units on it. The front unit it's a 2-bedroom. There are 3 other units on the property. They're very deteriorating shape, old buildings. They're in very need of care. In the rear of the property, there's only 4 parking spaces that serves all these 4 units. Right now, as it stands, it's very deficient as far as parking is concerned. So when you see people parking naturally outside, why they're parking at the street is because they don't have enough parking on their site themselves. So most of these buildings that existing there, they're non-conforming. They just, if today you want to have number of parking correctly for that property, they will not comply, obviously. So what we are providing, we're actually providing more parking space, more appropriate. And in addition to that, the guest parking that we're providing, so we are actually taking off the parking spaces, from the street. So this is not a single-family neighborhood, and we're not going to be the only applicant here that we are requesting for multifamily. And there's no way that we're going to keep one unit in front and remodel it, and there's just no way we can do it. It's just not feasible at all, especially where we are deficient on parking, deficient on energy, and the existing buildings don't even comply with any of the recent codes or ordinances. So anyway, that's what I want to say. If you have any questions or clarifications or something, if I can at this time. But to us, it's an improvement to the to the neighborhood, obviously. And the project actually not only is going to create more take-off parking spaces from the street for themselves, but actually will provide more curb areas or curb spaces for neighborhood because we will have much more parking spaces for our own use on our property. So that's what I was going to say.
Just for clarification, you said 4 units, but a staff report says 3 units on the property. Is it 3 or 4 on the existing property?
It's
right
actually 3. It's the front house. There's a garage outside.
Okay, you can't speak. I'm sorry. But
Can if you invite them up.
yeah, but I'll let the applicant answer that question.
As far as I know, there were 4.
Okay.
So either 4 or 3. The bottom line is that they have only 3 parking spaces in the back. But as far as I know, my information is 4 units.
Okay. Just a clarification. Any questions since we have them here, Mr. Board members? Or Ms. Thank you, Mrs. Arabian.
Thank you.
Close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Anything you want to ask staff, or should
So actually, going back to the parking, the 3-bedroom.
3 bedrooms and 1501.
So,
And.
So if it's 1,700, but it's
1 bedroom.
1 bedroom,
2.5 parking spaces.
It's or rather than.
it should be or,
Yeah.
right? But it says and.
It's
So
and.
I've been told by some planners that it's
Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Mulligan, because I had
1,500
that
and
question
3
asked
bedroom.
several times.
and I've been.
Yeah, those are efficiencies. The next one is,
It says
It
2-bedroom.
Efficiencies in all of them.
right. And, yeah, so the efficiency, the square footage doesn't matter. 3 bedrooms by de facto 2.5 spaces.
Right.
If
But
there's
if it's a 2-bedroom, but it's 1,700 square feet,
2 spaces.
2 spaces.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the reason the square footage is there, the idea of someone built very gracious efficiency units that theoretically could probably have
So
more
a
people living in
1,700
them.
square foot 2-bedroom, it's still considered as a 2-car.
It's a 2-bedroom, 2-space.
Got it.
Okay.
So at what
So
square
what I was
footage
told
does
is
it
correct.
kick into the 2.5?
Well, that's what, I've been getting
The
different
square
text
footage
things.
is, if
So
it
just
goes,
bedrooms govern, that's it.
Right, square
The
footage
bedroom
only
cover.
governs when you have an efficiency.
And that's
well,
it.
if it goes over 2,000, then it becomes, I
Well,
think that's what it
these
says.
units are 2,000.
That's what I was told. If it goes over 2,000, then it becomes 2.5.
No, only for efficiencies, then it becomes 3, or a 4-bedroom or higher
Okay.
becomes 3.
All right.
Let's assume it meets the code, because if it doesn't,
Right.
you know.
That was more of my understanding
Okay.
of the code itself.
Okay. Well, I'll start deliberating. Mr. Simonian, I'll start with you.
Well, overall, the project is well laid out. It's zone 2250, and they're providing 5 units. And so it's laying out quite well. And if you look at the site plan, there's a lot of space around it. The open space is certainly working at the rear, and on top of that, they have the private open spaces on the east side. The front setback is dealt with adequately with the ramp kind of coming up. There's individual entrances to each unit off the west side, and which lends itself quite nicely, as I said, as the private spaces on the east side. So that works well. Insofar as the parking is concerned, I think they're by code, and it's going to really get cleared up when they do the track map process, whether that's during construction or after construction. There's some set protocols as far as what the Planning Commission, I would imagine, goes with, and they're going to apply it like they've done hundreds of times in the past. Now, how that exactly works out with those exact, guest spots and how they're divided, I think will be hashed out eventually. The private garage concept, I think, is a nice concept to have. Overall, it builds nicer, more, it's a better home ownership opportunity is what it is. People are able to park in their own garages and go directly up. The roof decks are also nice. I'm always preaching roof decks. Every time I bring it up, I think...
You got one?
Yeah, we got one. And this is an interesting way to do it, because they've kind of sunk it within the mansards. So typically when someone's doing a roof deck, they'll do the flat roof. And then you got to really pull it back for visibility sake. But in this case, they've kind of sunk it into the mansard, so it's not really imposing on the neighbors. If anything, they're going to get some more greenery up there with those trellises. So overall, I think the project is well laid out, and the massing and the height certainly works. It's not overbearing. It's a multifamily street, and it is what it is. This is where we encourage this type of development. So overall, I support it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Palmer?
Yes, I've got a few comments. Regarding those trellises up on the roof deck, you might consider making those metal material, like a powder coated, because if it's wood, they're going to sit up there, they might not get a lot of use, and it would be a maintenance issue. So that was just a suggestion. I think our drawings don't reflect what some of the new drawings have. I think that's where some of the questions were.
Where are the new drawings?
Ones on the board don't reflect a lot of like the driveway width. Anyway, I'm just saying. And I think we discussed those areas with the trash bins conflicting with backing up. I would like to make that a condition that be worked out. Trash bins. The landscaping on the roof deck, I don't know how you're going to keep that watered or planted. It looks like there's pots up there and some vines and things. What's spec'd out is going to be dormant half the year, so you might want to look at what you've got up there and then provide adequate irrigation for that. You've got a couple trees in the front area. I would switch the trees. You've got large ones towards the building and narrower ones towards the street. I'd swap them so you have enough room so it accents the building. And I agree. I think it addresses all the issues with the parking and gets people into there with parking, more private parking. I like the architecture on the building. I think it's going to be a good addition to the neighborhood, and not better than a lot of the ones that are out there. And I think we just need some clarification on those walls that go from the street, how the height is. Okay. I'd like to see maybe another foot of planting on that west side, because it doesn't look like it might be enough. But other than that,
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Mr. Charles?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I too will join my colleagues in supporting the project. I think that the neighborhood, even though there are some single-family residence or smaller units. It is a multifamily unit. I think it's commendable that individuals like the speaker that was here, Mr. Sauce, are investing in the traditional, in this case, 1920s Spanish style and other homes that are in the area, and that's very commendable. But this area is multifamily designated. The development that's earmarked just across the street is going to be at some point in the future a low-income, high unit density project, and so it's refreshing to see a ownership opportunity like this project being developed, and I think the quality of materials and the overall design is very nice. I have some concerns, however. One of them was the trash area. I think that needs to be either recessed into the planter area, because I don't see any tree wells that are affected on, at least on the landscape plan, that potentially would be problematic. But there needs to be some way to address those two large trash receptacles. You're going to have parking issues. A recommendation, aside from the design, is to make sure that the CCNRs are very well worked out. A lot of people tend to use these garages for storage, and you're going to have issues with parking, and that's going to be something that is a sellability issue and an issue for the HOA down the road. I would revisit the planting. I think Ms. Palmer had a very good suggestion on the trees in the front. I think that the rooftop deck is a great amenity, but I don't see anything ever surviving on the roof decks. They just get too warm, and so I would join in the comment that you have to revisit that issue, that item. The other item that I had out here was the lift that you have in the back, and this handicap accessibility issue. This would be just a recommendation, consideration to kind of revisit that item. If you do have a handicapped person that is a resident here or visits here, I don't think that lift, even though it meets code, is very accessible for someone with disabilities. So I would think that you would want to have that lift revisited, or at least the paving materials that you have accessing that lift area. Someone in a wheelchair is not going to want to go over cobblestone materials, raised cobblestone materials, to be able to access their home. Even if it's someone with a temporary disability, that's going to be problematic. So I think you need to revisit that element. And then the lighting elements, I think, are well designed, but we want to make sure that the voltage is such that they're not too bright, because you do have the neighbors immediately to both sides, and that could create a little bit more lighting than at nighttime than they would be comfortable with. Other than that, I would support the project, and I do think that the circular feature in the front is well thought out, and then the details specifically make it very nice.
Mr. Mulligan, thank you, Mr. Churchill.
So I also am in supportive of the project. I think it's very well done, and it is an appropriate project in an appropriate zone. So I think if anything, I think neighbors should be aware of any development in the future development, and the properties they buy in, and the zones that they're in, and what the capabilities and the potentials are for each lot. So having said that, I will talk about the project itself. So I think most of the issues around the building has been discussed. So I'll touch upon two conditions that I think is really important. I know it was briefly brushed off, but I seriously see a major issue with the stairs coming out of the garage. That is definitely based on the dimensions you're in the walkway. So either we maintain that and you keep the 5-foot setback. In the garage you have a 5-foot setback to the retaining wall, and the stairs is right next to that. But the stairs starts at 9'6". So I think there's definitely some design issue that needs to be addressed, and I don't know how that's going to impact either the garage, or it's going to be a bump out in the exterior wall. So, and I'm not sure how that's going to get addressed. The second suggestion that I have, and I understand that we're talking about some of the parkings that we're meeting all the requirements, but some suggestion that I have is that consider pushing this section of the retaining wall, being that it is a condo and it is going to be some issues later on, and also the neighborhood and providing more parking space. I think it is a luxury, but you're already going to have some shoring along here. If it's possible, we can push this back and create some tandem parking here, possibly 3 parking spaces to give you 1 for each unit. Then this way you'll have at least 90 feet of 3 30-footers, or if not less. The other option is for the trash to be pushed in to have a little bit of a retaining condition here, and then these can pushed in and you have your...
Where would the new parking go, Mr. Maliki?
Well, imagine this line being pushed back about right there.
Okay.
I did the calculation, so if you have a 1 foot distance from the property line, that'll give you enough to plant something there, something on grade. I don't know if you want to do that. Then you have the 8-inch wall. Then you have a 9-foot wall. 9-foot parking, and then the 11-foot. You have right now 22 foot 6 inches, so we have an extra 6 inches to play with. So there is the room, but this is definitely going to be.
Yeah, if you play around
I
with
just
that
don't
one.
know how that's going to be solved. So that's the only thing. Other than that, I agree. I think the paver stones is beautiful, a great idea, but I don't think accessibility. I don't think it's going to be functional. But other than that, everything else is nicely done. All the details are covered. And thank you for providing the section this time. So at least we have
Thank you.
some idea.
I concur with my colleagues. I think we've covered most of the points. My main concern was the side yard, as we discussed it again. What I like to see, however you work the garage, but we shouldn't touch that side in a way, if you can make it work, because that will affect my landscaping. Now, you can push the garage, the trash down below, but as far as the stairs, I think what the garage is shown, or however he's going to work it out. But one thing I really, I appreciate the design. I know the quality is there, but I would have liked to see, if it's possible, the front unit enter from the front. Is that something you've considered? It will really enhance the building further and give you a little more of a residential scale. Is that something that you could do?
We had talked about that. I think the decision was not to go in that direction. We could put it as a consideration for the applicant to reconsider, or you could open and see if it's possible.
Well, I want to see if the board members we have a agreement on that. If not, I'll leave it as a consideration and let him.
I would leave it as I think that it would add a lot to the design.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I think I'd leave it as a consideration because.
Yes, absolutely. It will make a more residential scale. And those are my comments. The only thing I want to make sure, where you're going to put the gas meters, they can't go in the garage and mailboxes, and you got to consider those things in the design.
Details.
Yeah, but as far as the design, I'm satisfied with it. One thing I was a little concerned with how you access the deck from the circular element, but then I figured it out on the plan. You have a look, but I'm hoping that clearance works.
So you mean here?
As far as entering the unit?
It's like
On the third floor.
On the
to
third
get
floor.
to the
You
deck.
see, he accesses it from here.
the front entrance.
Oh, the front, okay. Somewhere in here, you can come in and go into the unit. Well, really enhance it further. But if they can't make it work, they can't make it work. But really, that's something that if the board has a direction on that.
My thoughts are, it's similar with the roof deck idea that I had with the previous project. These are almost like design guidelines, concepts that should be discussed very early on by staff, if that's the direction that we believe we want to give staff. For example, if we have, and let's say in the city of LA, it's very clear in their guidelines. let's say even the small lot program. If you have a home facing the street, it should be accessed from the street. So it's part of the design guidelines, and then anybody going through it from the get-go realizes, okay, that's what I got to do. So I believe in this case, although it's a wonderful idea, it's a bit late, I think. However, if overall there's consensus, we could discuss that. But in general, if that's a direction we want to give staff, I think it's a wonderful direction where applicants that come in, they're from the beginning encouraged to have that kind of a connection with the street front, where the remaining homes that are on these multifamily streets actually have some sort of a continuity as far as a front door and a front porch is concerned and a front trellis. So it's a wonderful, wonderful concept. And those are my thoughts on it, is if that's what we want, which is a great idea, is maybe to have that quick discussion and then give some direction. Similarly with some other things that were discussed with the other case.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. And I think, with these smaller residential scale, this will benefit. I don't know if you can work, but maybe with direct staff, this is what the items that we're looking at.
The staff is already doing. We recognize the value of front entries on these long, thin units. I think the issue here was the elevation change, and there were some issues, but I can't remember. I know we had talked about it.
I would support a recommendation for them to look at, because looking at this, and again, I'm the only architect on the board, but I can see an entry through the stairway area with the reconfiguration of the stairway. I've seen these types of entrances before in properties in LA. Old Spanish homes actually have those types of entries. It might work, it might not. Leave it up to the architect for them, but I would support a recommendation because I think that would add a lot of value if it can be done. Okay, so I think it would add a lot of value to the
we'll
unit, the unit owner for Unit 1 to have a separate delineated front entrance.
But it needs to be one thing, is I think if we're just doing it should be an actual entrance. There should be a separate walkway. There should be some sort of a front porch area. There should be a front trellis area. It really should feel like, the entrance of a home. And whether that's achievable in this design.
He's doing that.
I think you come out here. He has a porch area,
even if you
and
enter from the
you
side,
walk in through here, and it's just like a little. You can even have a little side door.
I think
18 inches
if
high.
we're
And
proposing to be considered rather than a condition, then I would support that.
And we definitely bring that issue up on buildings like this. We've also heard from some of our applicants that there's a sense that the perceived security of that unit is different than the other units that are behind the secured gate. And we've heard that, and we respect that decision. But
would you still have to provide 1 to 20 ADA access to that specific unit, or is that just to the common area?
That's interesting. I don't know.
Well, he still has to get to the building from the street anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, you still have to get to the building street from the...
Absolutely, but
The
I'm just asking.
reason that I think you would have to do it is because you provided the lift in the back and there's a handicap parking.
And in other words, a disabled person that wanted to buy the front unit
Would have to come all the way out through the gate, go down the ramp, come back up another walkway.
Let's make it a consideration.
Consideration.
A consideration and the future.
And we've seen a number of projects that do have that front entry, and we always think that's a
And-
good idea, so.
And the gate could be moved.
gate could be, many things could happen,
Yeah.
But it's a great idea.
I mean, let's make it a consideration at this point and let the applicant, he's creative enough, he can make it work if there's a way. And for future projects, we encourage that.
Mr. Putt, do our design guidelines, multifamily design guidelines, mention anything about that scenario that we're speaking of?
We're discussing it in our small lot guidelines right now, and I don't think they do. I'd have to.
You're correct, LA
Have
has
them
it.
here, and we
So
can
it's
check
LA
after the
County,
hearing.
It just helps the environment a little bit. Sure.
It prevents
Okay.
fortification.
That was a very good. Yeah, I think there's so much value added to on the sales side. I think it would merit
Right.
very serious consideration.
A big positive.
Yeah.
He's the neighbors.
Hopefully, yeah. Okay, so we need to go through the conditions?
I think so.
I hope it's not that many.
It's not too bad. I'll talk about this in two different ways, but first we will ask the architect to revise the plan of the garage to ensure that the stairs are aligned, coming up from the garage into the unit. And then I'll get to the parking and trash part in a second. I'll get to it right now. We will try to, we'll have a condition to, or actually let's do this in order. So consideration to make the roof trellises out of powder-coated metal rather than the wood, which to prevent early deterioration.
Did you say consideration or a condition?
That's a consideration as I heard it before.
It's a comment for maintenance purposes.
All right.
The trash bin, the current trash bin location is going to provide problems for access to the garages. So that may be addressed by moving that wall, but it could also be addressed by adding an inset under the adjacent walkway so that the trash could be pushed into an alcove under that walkway. The goal will be to make sure that there's no parking conflicts where the trash bins are.
I would just add on the trash, there's individual trash chutes with storage space in front. So maybe working with the city to see if they would want a centralized unit or individual units that are...
Generally, the city wants centralized trash collection on buildings of this size because otherwise we'd have 15 bins out every trash day. The landscaping on the roof terrace needs to be adequately irrigated for the species provided. The trees at the front, the two taller trees proposed against the building should be swapped, moved forward.
I just meant the variety should be swapped. He's got a very large, wide tree.
Okay.
And narrow ones, they should be swapped.
Okay, so we'll just move the wider trees to the street, the narrow
That
trees to
irrigation
the building.
comment was just that, make sure the planting is going to be planting that stays, not just a couple pots up there with.
Okay, so permanent planting areas with proper irrigation?
That's what he has, it's just small pots there. He doesn't, it's just
It
little
doesn't
vines,
say.
it's just vines growing on the, that's about it.
No, he's got grasses growing there, too.
Not on the deck.
In pots.
They're lightweight pots is what we're hearing, and
Lightweight, I'm just saying they need to be big enough, they need to be maintained, it's going to,
The spec is there, and it has its own irrigation system, it's a drip system.
I'm just saying the plant material that's showing there is going to be seasonal. The bougainvillea will freeze, so it's going to look bad for a while, and the grasses will be dormant for numerous months. So I'm just saying, just to look at it,
so would you like to see more year-round planting material?
it's up to them. I just,
Okay.
This is a consideration,
it's
correct?
not going to work.
I had it as a condition, but I could make it a consideration?
It's a consideration.
Okay.
I mean, it's up there for a reason, and you just don't want it. Many times it gets
So
left.
We've got the trees at the front. We're going to ask that 1 foot of additional landscape strip to be provided along the west walkway.
If it works, we don't know if that area.
If there's enough space.
That's a consideration also.
Okay.
But we don't want the setback to change, though. The setback of the building shouldn't change.
No. They would only be the walkway might
Yeah, okay.
get narrower if it still
Whatever
meets.
it is already, you know.
We talked about the trash area. We're going to revise the paving material in front of the lift to ensure that the path of travel from the lift to the main walkway is a smooth surface. Lighting, we're going to ask that the light fixtures be shielded so that they don't shine directly toward the neighbors. We can't regulate the wattage, but we can ask for the light to be directed down rather than out.
Yes.
And the garage stair issue again. We have a consideration to push the east garage wall further toward the property line to study whether there would be enough space to allow parallel parking along that wall, to provide additional parking. We have a consideration to consider whether an entry at the front unit from the street is feasible. And then we have a condition to ensure that all meters, mailboxes, et cetera, are appropriately located and screened from view as necessary.
We don't want all these things, gas meters in the front.
Yeah.
Got to hide it somehow.
Jay, I'd like to get back to, say, Mr. Platt.
Jason.
Go back to the issue of the lighting. I think on this type of design, having it as shielded lighting is not going to be conducive to the design. You'd have the suggested lighting material. I'm sorry, the suggested lighting fixture, I think is appropriate. I think always would agree that it's an appropriate light fixture.
Yeah.
But I think we may be studying the overall luminescence as a better condition than requiring that they be shielded, because
I don't think we've ever done that, only because every property owner could easily switch out a bulb to whatever they wanted it to be. So if we want a more permanent solution, we could ask for a revision to the design of the fixture so that it's shielded but still appropriate to the Spanish style.
Is there such a thing?
It could also be.
I just can't envision.
You could have.
But also, I'm not sure on size of the project, but the code requires now that you have occupancy sensor and motion sensors on the light, so they're not, the.
I think
Do they have a dark sky ordinance
No,
anticipating?
not in Los Angeles is my guess. But.
Then I withdraw my.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Well, but I can think of. I see it as valid as a concern for the neighbors, and if you think of some Spanish light fixtures have like perforated metal, where there's light coming down, but you just see dots of light that aren't really beaming out. There are different types of fixtures.
I assume we're referring to the roof deck?
No,
No,
the lighting,
it's
overall
on the
lighting.
along the
Overall
walkway.
lighting. Oh,
yeah.
okay. That's where I was a bit confused whether we were talking about the roof deck or not. Well, we've always dealt with exterior lighting which is shielded.
That's generally.
Okay.
And what's the what are we trying to consider?
I can't envision a shielded lighting fixture that fits well with this type of design in my
I
mind.
see.
And just if you know of it working in the past, then I'm okay with it.
Okay, so we'll keep it as a condition for the shielding.
Okay.
Okay, then that's everything that I had. Unless Kristen or Chris has anything?
I just want to clarify, the tree question was a condition or a consideration?
Condition.
What?
The swapping of the tree?
It's a condition.
It's a condition.
And the question on the condition from staff,
Oh, right.
the upper,
I always forget about those. That was just.
and where do you propose that should take place?
When you look at the stair tower, there's a band course running along underneath the windows. It felt that compressed those windows and maybe added to the sense of height. And so there was a thought that if that band course were either wider or perhaps dropped a little lower, it might help those proportions a little bit. And it's based on precedent of a specific site that we used as a basis for this feature.
This you're talking,
Yeah,
so you want to
dropping it.
lower it here?
Not that far, but
Not, I mean,
give a
yeah,
little
so-
more breathing
yeah,
room.
right.
Maybe have a sill course below the windows and then a band below that. Something to just revise the proportions. For us, it's not a critical. We just wanted to point that out to the board.
Okay,
You keep it? Or?
keep it.
Okay.
So with that, anybody want to entertain a motion?
I'll move to approve the project with the conditions as stated.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay. So roll call. Board Member Simonian?
Yes?
Palmer?
Yes.
Churchian?
Yes.
Lekian?
Yes.
And Chairperson Mardian.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, 5-0.
Thank you. We have one set of minutes for tonight from the June 11th meeting.
I would
Yes.
move to approve those minutes.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
Mr. Charchian?
Abstain.
Chairperson Mardian?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer? Mr. Simonian?
Yes.
I would move to adjourn.
I second.
Thank you.
All right.
Huh?